Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on our complimentary webinar, Extended Enterprise Learning, Creating a Big Impact on the Bottom Line. My name is Nissa, and I will be your moderator for this session. Today's presenters are David Wentworth, Principal Learning Analyst for Brandon Hall Group, Tonkin, Principal Consultant for Cornerstone OnDemand, and Jordan Trinklein, Partnership Training for First Bankcard. I would like to extend a thank you to Cornerstone OnDemand for being our partner on today's webinar. Cornerstone OnDemand is a global leader in cloud-based learning and human capital management software. The company is pioneering solutions to help organizations realize the potential of the modern workforce, including the extended enterprise. Based in Santa Monica, California, the company's solutions are used by nearly 3,000 clients worldwide, spanning more than 31 million users across 191 countries and 43 languages. For more information, please visit their website at www.cornerstoneondemand.com. And now a little bit about Brandon Hall Group. We are a research and analyst firm that empowers excellence in organizations around the world through our research and tools. Our vision is to inspire a better workplace experience. We have world-class research, data, and expertise across all areas in human capital management. Currently, we have open surveys in learning content, HCM, technology spending, and compliance training. We would love to hear from you. In exchange, you could receive free gift cards, research reports, and more. To participate, please visit our website at www.brandonhall.com and click on Open Surveys. This presentation is being recorded. The playback and slides will be provided to everyone within 24 hours of the webinar in a follow-up email. If you would like to ask a question, please do so by typing it into the question box for our presenters. If you would like to download a copy of the presentation right now, you can find that in the handout section. And with that, I'll hand it over to David so we can get started with the agenda.
Great, thank you, Nisa, and thanks everybody for joining today. So today what we're going to do is Tom and I are going to try to spend some time and talk through extended enterprise learning. It's a term you may or may not have heard thrown about. Maybe you fully understand it. Maybe you're just starting to learn about it. But Tom and I want to spend a little time explaining what we mean when we talk about extended enterprise learning and what it means for the business. Why is it important to you? And what can organizations do to take advantage of it, and what does it mean? So that also involves talking through some of the challenges that it presents, obviously the benefits that can be reaped by developing a strategy around extended enterprise learning, and what some of those strategies might look like. And we're lucky enough to have Jordan from First Bankcard here to sort of talk through their experience with extended enterprise learning, what it means for them, how they go about it, and the sort of results that they're getting from doing it. So we can walk through an actual example of a company that's putting all these things that we're going to talk about into practice. So we're really excited to have him here today. As Nisa mentioned, you can use that question box to ask questions. Feel free to ask them at any time. I'll keep an eye on those and try to get to them in real time. If you have any commentary or anything else that you want to add, please use that question box for that as well. And we'll also have a little bit of time at the end to make sure we catch up with any questions we may have missed. So with that, I just want to bring Tom in straight away to sort of set the tone and talk a little bit about what it is when we mean when we say extended enterprise.
Yeah, thank you, David, and appreciate everybody's time today on the call. I like to make this very conversational. That's why we have David and myself talking about this. I think sometimes people that have an extreme amount of understanding of the market sometimes forget and utilize some of these words like extended enterprise. I mean, let's be honest, folks. I mean, it's just, I think could be many different things. However, hopefully we're here to give you a better understanding of what that means. And extended enterprise really means is you as an enterprise have some dependencies outside of your four walls to actually be successful, whether you be a for-profit or nonprofit organization. And so when we talk about the extended enterprise, we're talking about not only is it outside your four walls, but it is global, it is diverse, whether you're talking about cultures or nationalities. And because of the size, that introduces associated complexity. It's not as simple as taking something small and just making it big. The minute you make something big and becomes big, it becomes complex by definition. And so I like to explore David and I like to explore the next couple slides here to really not only give you a clear understanding of what we mean by extended enterprise, but obviously what problems it poses and why these problems should be solved. So we first start with the enterprise, right? Which I consider what's going on inside your four walls, right? You have all sorts of corporate functions that make the company work. You have things that you have to buy things, you have to sell things, right? And those things could be services or products or widgets or whatever it may be. And that's what we think about the enterprise as a whole. However, for that enterprise to thrive and to do well, it has to depend on things outside the four walls. So those widgets we're talking about have to be made by somebody, and those parts come from suppliers. And when we sell things, right, we're sometimes depending on resellers, and let's not forget what I would consider probably the most important part of our cycle here, our customers. Because guess what, folks? Without customers, and take it for someone who knows, you're just another person wasting a lot of time. So all of this connected becomes that enterprise or that extended enterprise.
Right. Right, and I think that's the key, is that we have to remember what level of responsibility the organization has through, across those different groups. And to think of it another way is, we think of the organization as like, okay, the employees, I understand that. I'm clearly responsible for the employees. I also, maybe I have contractors that don't necessarily work for the company, but we employ their services, so I'm responsible for them to a certain degree. And it just keeps going from there, right? You've got other sorts of partners you work with, channel partners, whatever they may be, the different sales channels that you go through, which then brings you out, as Tom mentioned, to that most important group, the actual clients and the customers. But it even goes beyond that, right? There's people who understand maybe your brand. Certain organizations, people might not be your customers per se, but you're trying to deliver information about your brand. And then there's just the public at large, right? There's at least some sort of responsibility there. So you could include all of this as part of the extended enterprise. It's just depending on your organization, what it is you do, what it is you're delivering. Those are the things that you can think about. And so in our research, we asked organizations, what is the extended enterprise? How much of your learning audience, when you're creating and delivering learning, how much of that audience would you consider to be external? And so 46% of companies said that they're, on average, companies say that about 46% of their learning audience is within the four walls of their organization, which means, to some degree, more than half, on average, more than half of the learning audiences are outside of the organization, whether they're remote and distributed employees or non-employees, right? Those resellers, those customers, those sorts of things. So clearly the extended enterprise ecosystem is quite large, and organizations need to reach out to these different groups with varying degrees of regularity. So if we look at this like, field support team, like so, the technical support or customer support, you see that organizations are reaching out to those groups like daily, weekly, monthly. You can see those yellow, purple, and dark blue squares in the middle. As you move out further along the chain, the frequency does diminish. But then when you get back into something like, say, customers, right, all of a sudden there's a big jump where organizations are spending a lot of time and energy needing to reach out to their customers from a learning perspective with relative frequency. And we'll get into a little bit more about what types of learning is being delivered to these different groups. What does that look like? But what I'm trying to do is just set up the fact that there's a lot of activity that goes on outside the four walls of the organization, and companies need to figure out how to manage that and how to leverage it and how to make the most of it. Tom makes a really good point. It's about aligning all of those groups.
Well, yeah, David, you made an excellent point, and I think one of the things that we do when we get connected with customers and being actually part of Cornerstone and you're part of Brandon Hall, and we're talking to our customers, one of the things we have to do is we have to close the gap of language. I know that when I talk to Fortune 50 companies, very large, complex, 300,000 employees, you have, for example, the learning organization will say something like, well, my customer. What they really mean is another entity within the four walls. And you have to also have an appreciation for, well, guess what? That customer that you're talking customer, they have customers, and so on. And that customer doesn't necessarily mean that you're now exchanging dollars for widgets or whatever it may be, but you're servicing them in some way. And if you take a holistic view, you're able to abstract yourself out of that. You can be able to see that, look, it's very, very simple. It's like, what is happening outside your four walls? I'm just making a very simple language there. Once you understand that, for the next couple slides, I really want to talk about the challenge. Once you accept that there are these different pieces to your enterprise, you now have to have a level of alignment between those. So I like to give you something to consider here, and I'm not going to go into a diatribe here about how, how connected we are and how small the world is, because everybody here really knows. But what does that really matter to when you do business? One of the interesting statistics that we found out was that for an average customer that you have, mind you, it's at when David spoke of all those different layers, at any given time, that next layer could be considered a customer. I use that in air quotes. So for that average customer that average customer influences 42 other people of positive experience of your company, organization, department, whatever that may be. Now, mind you, I said it in a positive sense, but I think it's obvious for us to say, look, that same customer could influence those same 42 people in a negative way. And so you can see how quickly this can escalate, expand exponentially to provide that level of experience to your company. So first rhetorical question as we move forward, are you aligned to your suppliers, partners, and customers? And we want to talk a little bit about what that alignment means. So let's start here with the inside your four walls, because I think there's an alignment that needs to be considered inside our four walls before we can take it out. Mind you, if you're not really aligned inside your four walls, you're probably not going to be aligned outside. So let's start with this very interesting statistic that we got here, which basically talks about the different understanding, what's important between what the L&D department does, because we're really talking about learning and development here, and what the business, right? And the business, again, I'm using that term customer in air quotes, very, very broad. And we see the green dots, let's just make this very clear. The green dots is what the business thinks should be important about learning. And the blue dots on the bottom right-hand side is what the learning and development folks think is important. I don't think I need to go much more to explaining this slide to say we have an internal alignment problem between ourselves and the business. Mm-hmm. Let's take that to the next level, which is let's talk about what leadership wants to see out of learning. So you take a look at what the ATD and the Institute and ROI Institute talks about when they say, they just basically ask a bunch of questions, hey CEOs, what do you want to see from learning? And again, you don't really need to be a statistical genius to figure out that impact is probably one of the most important things you can do, and learning itself is only 28%. So if you marry these statistics with the discrepancy of the previous statistics, we see that we have an internal misalignment to begin with. Now that's really important. Let me just finish out that thought, and then we'll go to this slide. So that's really important because what happens here is that if you don't have that internal alignment and you go and try to scale, so let's say you did, or let's say you think you did, and you then go scale outside your enterprise, you're probably going to scale an incorrect process or an incorrect message or incorrect strategy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we have these two issues. We have to not only align ourselves internally, right, between the L&D and the business, but we also have to align with the different parts of the enterprise. So, the partners, vendors, suppliers, and lastly, customers. So we can ensure not just deployment of an enterprise strategy, but a correct deployment.
Mm-hmm. So, given that we've sort of, both Tom and I have walked through this and tried to explain conceptually what is extended enterprise learning is. We just wanted to quickly get a sense from the group here where you are in your journey with this. Is this something you're brand new to you, experience or knowledge of extended enterprise, or is it something that your organization is currently working on? So there's a poll up on your screen, and just if you want to let us know where you are, and if one of the first 4 responses doesn't really fit your situation, you want to select other, feel free, and you can explain further in the question box if you like. If you'd like to explain your other, if you have any commentary, feel free to put it in there. But we just wanted to get a sense of who's on the line and where organizations are with this challenge. Let's see, we've got almost half of the group. I want to give it another couple of seconds here to get through, and as you're voting, one thing I wanted to ask you, Tom, is as a provider, do you see? I mean, I know that we've gotten a lot more inquiries lately. Do you see more inquiries from organizations about this type of solution, that companies are more interested in extended enterprise?
Oh, I absolutely do. We have somewhat of something must have happened in the market, right? It was just had this breakthrough, because I think it's that initial realization that, my goodness, we didn't realize the level of dependency that we truly had, and if we have to make sure that our extended enterprise, again, partners, vendors, and finally customers, really understand what our intention or our message is for our particular offering. And so there is incumbent upon us to be successful ourselves, but as well as we certainly want our customers, suppliers, and vendors also be successful.
Right. And so we're going to just share the results of the poll so everyone can take a look, and you can see there's only about 13% that say that this is all brand new. And then you've got, it's pretty evenly spread out here, with about a quarter saying that they're an internal HR person or a trainer with some experience. 14% have extensive experience. Another 30 are operational role, and they're delivering training to external users. So, it's all across the board, and I think, Tom's experience reflects mine at our organization. With the inquiries have increased dramatically, and I think, the way Tom's explained this and walked through, most organizations have been dealing with these challenges, long before now, but it's suddenly gelled into a thing where they recognize it and are able to actually build a strategy and deploy a solution around it. And speaking of trying to come up with a solution that does all these things that we're talking about and reaches all these places, talk a little bit about how a solution can work.
Well, I can, David. Just a quick point, which is interesting, that it made exactly the point we just made on that poll. As you know, we've been talking about this in different webinars, and I already see the number changing. Right, I already see people being it's moving more to people either know and they're extensively. So those numbers are changing as recent as just now from, say, a few months ago. So I find that little interesting data point. But what's interesting about the extended enterprise is not just delivering trainings to everyone else and sort of make it coincident, but when you do that, there's a whole bunch of really good things that happen. So improved data quality comes, because guess what? You're now going to have a different point of view. You're going to get greater feedback, increased compliance, and I don't necessarily mean the harassment type of compliance, right? But whether you're in a regulated industry or that, you have greater levels of breaking down silos, because you now have a new level of communication, right? Learning is a communication style that you have between two entities. Certainly reduce support costs, right? So no longer do your extended enterprise have to call back in to arguably very simplistic issues. They can then learn about it. They can sort of be self-sufficient. Again, I talked a little bit about gathering feedback, and then finally driving innovation. Through that feedback, you can have customers can come back and say, look, I know you're doing this. I understand your message, but you ever think about X? And my opinion is, I think we miss some of these, and arguably those could probably make a world of difference in many of our businesses today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So once you have that connection, and now what happens is, and what's interesting about trying to motivate others to consume this learning, we'll hear that a little bit later on our case study, and how that can happen is you also can have great levels of benefit outside your four walls too, right? So faster drive your adoption faster of whatever it is that you have offering, right? Increase your brand awareness, client loyalty. You know, it's interesting. I was listening to Carly Fiorina. I got a chance to listen to her a couple months ago, and she says, you know, one of the best ways to sort of manage all of this client and employee connection is familiarity, just getting to know people. And by sharing a little bit of your information you get to be more familiar with what's going around. You increase client loyalty, and your channel sales improve, right? You gather more intelligence, and you have an opportunity to cross-sell, upsell. And I would suggest that cross-sell and upsell is both ways, not only for yourself but also for your customer's customer, right? Because now they have a better perspective of your overall offering.
Mm-hmm.
So, question is, for those people that potentially are starting to get into Extended Enterprise or thinking about it, you're in that cusp, you could start asking some diagnostic questions of yourself, right? So you said, are you meeting the needs of your diverse extended enterprises? There might be people who go, you know something, I never really thought that my partner or these other folks really played at a much deeper level of my business, right? Do you accelerate onboarding and time to productivity? Here's a fascinating one that I've seen through Extended Enterprises. You know, it's very important for not only yourself, right, to increase onboarding and time to productivity when you hire somebody, but what if your partner hires somebody and they're now part of your supply chain out to your customers? Are you able to influence their time to productivity, right? Are you delivering, you know, the exact point of need? We talked about just-in-time training. That's a very, very simplistic understanding inside our four walls, but guess what? That same requirement is outside your four walls as well. Lastly, a value of your learning investment, right? So you put all this time and investment into the learning, whether it be the content or the people. Are you really reaping the benefits such that you can be able to have a multiplier effect driving out those resources outside your four walls? And lastly, I did talk a little bit about improved customer loyalty. So these are some diagnostic questions that you can ask of yourself of the learning and development assets, regardless of Extended Enterprise. But my suggestion here is Extended Enterprise will accelerate each one of these points for you. Again, this becomes more of a kind of a wrap-up question, right? We talked about the internal training. Now we're talking a little bit about that external training. So in the entirety value chain, because that's the thing. We talk about supply chain as being all of these people in place, but what we like to overlay over the top of that supply chain is, do you actually have the value chain? Are you now allowing your customers to have improved customer satisfaction? Are you allowing your suppliers to have greater levels of revenue? Are you allowing your vendors or your partners to have faster adoption in what it is that they're trying to do based on the partnership that you have with them? And lastly, similarly, is that innovation. Are your customers getting better at innovating what they want to do based upon your offering?
Yeah, exactly. And so given that, you know, talking about some of these benefits and the things that can occur by delivering this, I did want to run one more poll and get a sense from those in the group that are at least experimenting with, if not fully delivering extended enterprise learning. We launched this poll, and I'm just open it up and launch it, and just get a sense, what's the primary driver? Of course, there's always going to be more than one reason. It's probably all of these things. But what would you consider to be the primary driver for why you're delivering learning outside of your organization? And as you're responding to the poll, you know, Tom, that last slide and talking about you know, being able to improve some sort of metric in a group outside of your employees, you know, let's think about that for a second. Think about your organization, think about your everyday life trying to work, and even if your company, your department is firing on all cylinders and you're dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and everything's going perfectly, how often have you found yourself in a situation where some external party is causing something to derail or go slow, or something's not right because they don't have the right information or they're not getting back to you? What we're talking about here is the ability to actually influence that. Now, of course, you can't control everything, but having a strategy and a tool to be able to reach these different parties so that there is that alignment that Tom's talking about can solve so many of those issues where, you know, typically you'd be like, well, this is out of our control. There's nothing we can do about it. We just sort of have to wait for that external group to come through. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
No, I was going to agree, and my goodness, when you were talking, I thought of, you know, sort of 3 different examples that we personally, you know, here at Cornerstone, but also my customers, you know, find ourselves, and usually the answers are so funny, right? Usually the answers to those derailing problems are so simple. And you know, well, I didn't know you had such a widget, or I didn't, you know, or I didn't know that's how you could use it. And it's, you know, it's a PDF or something in your LMS that you could have easily have shared and solves all sorts of problems. So I think it's just a great opportunity, and I think many of our customers, including I can see here, the attendees here today, are very savvy in that.
So what we're seeing here from the results of the group online is that it's a bit more of the, I would assume, customer facing than the other side of the supply chain, since 28% said it was customer loyalty as the prime driver, 33% said supporting their products and or services, and you know, this is one that we'll touch on a little bit too, but that whole 28% say it's for generating revenue. I mean, think about that. How often have you had to sort of defend your learning function as a cost center within your organization? You know, there are opportunities to actually be a revenue generator and to make up some of those costs. So, all right, good to know what's driving the organization here. So we looked at it from our research perspective. You know, we asked organizations, what are your top business priorities? And if you think about some of the things that Tom's been talking about, you know, the extended enterprise learning can help address all of these, at least to some degree. Now, it's not going to be the one thing that gets you there, but you have an opportunity to influence all of these things, and these are the, you know, the top priorities for organizations. Obviously, improving customer experience. If you're able to deliver knowledge about your products and services that helps them, you know, get the most out of them and create a good relationship, you know, that's obviously improving the experience. Gaining market share, cutting
David,
expenses. Yes.
David, we don't have the slide back up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here it comes.
There you go.
Hang up on the pole. Sorry, folks. But these are the top priorities. You know, you talked about Tom talked about driving innovation, right? It's one of the top 5 business priorities for organizations. You know, being able to get input from outside of the organization in that feedback loop helps drive that innovation. So all of these things here that organizations are striving to do, extended enterprise learning can play a role in being successful in doing those things. You know, and so when we looked at our data and we asked companies that are doing extended enterprise learning, we said, how has your business benefited from extended enterprise learning? And they had a choice of things to pick from. And so you can see 60% of companies said, well, it increases the awareness of our products and services. And then on down the list here, 58% with reduces training costs, improves customer relations, right? So it's hitting back on all of those things, improving customer experience, reducing costs, all of those things, you know, increasing sales. These are the things that organizations say that they are achieving by delivering extended enterprise learning. And so, yeah, Tom?
Oh, yeah, I was going to jump in here real quick. So the slide before and this slide as well, I would suggest that the more sophisticated deployments of extended enterprise that have associated metrics such as these that people are aware of, you will quickly find out that there's a strong interdependence between each one of those. It just depends on what it is that you're trying to do with the extended enterprise. Just take the first 2, for instance, here. You say increase awareness of products and service, reduces training costs. I would suggest that these 2 have strong interdependence, that one will drive the other. And so that's the other thing that I want to make sure. This is a synergistic view of what extended enterprise can do for you.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know, we've talked through what it is, what some of the challenges are, what some of the benefits are. So we want to step into a little bit into some of the strategies about how do you actually do this. So, Tom, maybe you can start us off here.
Yeah. So, you know, by now you probably said, "Yeah, David, Tom, great, I get it." let's what can I do? And so for the next few minutes, I'd like to propose 3 different strategies that hopefully can be very actionable to you to move you from, say, either no deployment of extended enterprise to maybe, or to some, to one that's more mature. And there's 3 areas, right? This idea of achievement versus activity, consumerization of learning, and lastly, managing and extending the learning supply chain. So let me break those out here real quickly. So achievement versus activity. This kind of goes right back to what I just said about those the metrics, right? The idea that you can create extended enterprise, get some information, and start moving to more of a data-driven decision matrix as it pertains to business, right? So the learning aspect can actually provide feedback. Now, I would suggest that that can happen outside of extended enterprise, but I think there's a greater level of exponential growth when you can now include your extended enterprise, again, your customers, your suppliers, vendors, into that loop, so you get a lot more information, moving from what I call descriptive and diagnostic to predictive and prescriptive deployments. This is actually the maturity model of how analytics can help a business. I think that extended enterprise is a great source of information to be able to move that. So instead of just learning for learning's sake, you can now analyze the learning itself and move it from achievement to activity. Visibility to insights. One thing to be able to see something and measure something. It's a whole other thing to take those measures and be able to understand what's happening in your extended enterprise. And lastly, social and reflective learning, which I think is, for those that are steeped in learning in general, would agree with me that this is a very important part in how learning becomes sticky, if you will, and extended enterprise only helps that. So we go to the consumerization of learning. This is actually one that's probably very interesting. This is the one when everybody talks about how can I generate revenue from my learning. Well, certainly, if your learning is very good, meaning your content, your resources are very good and actually make an impact, guess what? There's lots and lots of people that would love to give you money, because if it does, it'll impact their bottom line as well, and it's just a cost of doing business. User-generated content too. Sometimes some of the best learning comes from the field. I know one particular example comes to mind where a retail company had a new product in place. There wasn't a lot of good learning coming from that particular product supplier, but there was a particular salesperson on the floor that learned the value proposition, was able to, so again, this was the customer side, right, was able to record themselves on their phone and say, hey, look, this is what I did. And next thing you know, the entire supply chain was able to see the value proposition that was being sold on the floor and be able to change their messaging and all that. So it's very, very simple. Outsource ideation, again, right, having all of that information out there allows for people to start consuming it and come together for that innovation. Increase your competitive edge. Again, if your customers and if your suppliers and vendors understand your mission, how products fit together, why your services do what you're supposed to do, better than your competitors, you're just going to have that edge. And lastly, brand optimization. It's one thing to get a message out there. Is the message being told outside your 4 walls consistent with your intentions of your message? And then lastly, I like to finish out with this idea of managing the extended learning supply chain, right? Enable partnership consistencies, right? So anybody who's ever dealt with a partner knows the challenges of bringing a partner on into the ecosystem, for lack of a better term. So the ecosystem, right? What are all the things you do, like what's the product do and how you fit in there, but better yet, what's the culture, right? What are the shared norms that we embody in this particular ecosystem? Well, your learning assets and your resources that you share will enable that. Targeted productivity. The ability to not only be able to understand what my goals are and for you to understand them, but also for me to understand what your goals are and how can I help you increase that. Increase your talent pool. I think sometimes when you have a very sophisticated and new offering, your talent pool to be able to utilize, deploy it, sell it, whatever, is very, very small. But if you let everyone into your ecosystem, that supply chain, all of a sudden your talent pool increases dramatically. So you have a lot more people being utilizing and telling the message that you like it in a very ubiquitous way. And then lastly, this idea of reduced risk and increased compliance. I think that just goes without saying. If everyone understands, you know, how your product is supposed to work, or your service, and how does it fit, you will be able to reduce that risk, especially in deployment, and arguably avoid some challenges later down.
Yep, absolutely. And so we've had a few people ask about this, you know, and as I anticipated and expected, that, you know, once we get through all the sort of theoretical and conceptual bits about how this works and what you can start to try to do and how to think about it, they want to see how it looks in real life and in action. So luckily for you, we've got Jordan from First Bankcard, who's actually going to walk us through how they approach this and talk a little bit about their experience with Extended Enterprise. So here is the case study. So Jordan, thanks for joining us, and take it away.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. And hello, everyone. My name, as David just said, is Jordan Trinklein. I'm a trainer with First Bankcard. We are a division of First National Bank of Omaha. And so in addition to overseeing the training efforts for our credit card partner employees, I also lead up the configuration and maintenance of the First Bankcard Learning Center, which is our version of the Cornerstone Extended Enterprise Learning Portal. So, you know, just to start, I'm going to give you a quick overview of who we are as a company, First National and First Bankcard. So to start with First National Bank of Omaha, we were founded in 1857, and we're a sixth-generation family-owned business. We've become the largest privately owned banking company in the United States with over $20 billion in assets and 5,000 plus employees. We're headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska, and if you're kind of from the Midwestern region, you might have heard of us, as we have a footprint in 7 states, including Colorado, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, South Dakota, and Texas. And First National Bank has actually been on the Forbes Best Banks in America list for 6 straight years, with a ranking of 16th on the most recent 2017 list. And then to transition over to First Bankcard, which is who I work for, we are the credit card division of First National Bank of Omaha. So we were actually the 5th bank in the country to begin issuing credit cards, which was back in 1953. Out of all of the issuers in America, we're currently ranked number 12 in terms of volume and outstanding balances. And then we have been partnering with financial institutions and co-branded companies for more than 40 years to bring products to the marketplace that their customers want. Currently, we have over 300 partners with credit card programs that we are always trying to make better, and this also involves training. So enough, you know, tooting our horn. Let's get into this case study. So again, what we do is we issue credit cards for banks and companies who we call partners, all across the continental U.S., and we work with each company to develop a co-branded credit card that fits into that partner's culture and sales strategy so that it's an attractive product for their customer base. So prior to 2016, First Bankcard was at a bit of a crossroads when it came to ensuring our 300-plus partners and their employees were being properly trained on the ins and outs of their credit card program. Credit cards are a heavily regulated industry, and there's always new mandates and regulations being sent down that credit card issuers like First Bankcard have to make sure that we're interpreting correctly and then working towards implementing those guidelines so that we can stay compliant with those organizations, one being the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So with these new interpretations of the Credit Card Acts, it's put more oversight on the credit card knowledge and competency of our partners and their employees. So these acts state that it is a requirement that any of our partner employees, all external, with customer interaction, are trained on their credit card program on an annual basis. So First Bankcard now must be able to show proof at any given time that an employee was trained, especially those that submit credit card applications on behalf of a customer. For instance, if you were to go into a bank branch and sit down with a personal banker, they might ask you if you want to apply for their bank's credit card, which we issue. Or if you went into a retail store and you were checking out and they said, hey, would you like to save $25 on this transaction? You just have to sign up for the credit card. Those individuals are being trained by us. So before Cornerstone, First Bankcard really had no way of providing this tangible data to an auditor or a regulator. We didn't have a system to distribute and track credit card training to partner employees, nor did we have any avenue to deliver compliance reporting. So when new or existing partners required credit card training, our training team, we would simply hold webinars and ILT sessions, but there was really no electronic means to track attendance, competency, and completion. So while we were meeting our educational accountability set forth by the company, we weren't moving the needle from a due diligence perspective. There had to be proof, and we had to find a way to provide that. So prior to 2016, if we would have been asked by the CFPB or any other internal auditor what our 2015 training completion progress was, what you see before you is all we would have been able to provide. Obviously this is just a silly representation to show pre-Cornerstone what we would have been able to give an auditor in 2015 had we been asked for a visual representation of the training completion progress or even a more detailed report of line-by-line items of users who had completed training. We had no trackable means to show this, thus no proof that employees were actually being trained on their credit card program. So to reach our goal, we determined that a learning management system that our partners' employees could log into and take training on was the best avenue to solve our issue. We did extensive research to find the best fit, and through that research and Cornerstone's reputation and their support structure and just the overall interface they provided, it was deemed that they would be the best fit for our needs. So once we got rolling with Cornerstone, we began the implementation phase. And for anyone with experience in launching a new platform, interface, system, or website, you know that the configuration implementation phase of anything can be very overwhelming. Well, that's the same thing for an LMS, especially for a team of people like us who have never went through that process. E-learning and the whole gamut that goes with it, it was a new frontier for us. But Cornerstone made the implementation phase manageable and easy to understand. During the configuration phase, we worked with a Blue Water implementation specialist every week to make sure we were meeting certain milestones that needed configuration within the LMS. So since we were launching this new LMS to over 300 plus external partners, we also had to develop a robust marketing and communication plan, which we handled in phases. This was meant to generate excitement for the new Learning Center and also give our partners awareness of their responsibilities tied to this new initiative, which was actually a very crucial piece of this puzzle. So, just an example of that, take, for instance, the enrollment of users. When you're working with 300 plus partners and all of their employees, getting people enrolled is a very large obstacle to overcome. We were actually requiring our partners to send in user files of all of their employees who they thought were associated with their credit card program, whether that be through a credit card promotion to customers, employees who would assist customers with the maintenance of their credit card accounts, or even back-end support staff who maybe handle trend analysis and metrics on their credit card portfolio. So we asked for those user files so that then we could upload them into the system for enrollment. And then we also needed to ensure that our partners were communicating this new LMS and their login credentials to all employees so that we could minimize the number of questions our team would receive in the support queue that we had to develop. And Dave, I think you can actually go ahead and move on there to the marketing. There you go. Yep. And then I think actually after the marketing phase there, I also have the communication phase, and then finally the launch phase. So after those three phases were completed and we felt that all avenues had been covered, we then launched to our partners in a series of waves so that we could reduce the amount of support questions that we would inevitably receive from our partners and their employees. So the First Bankcard Learning Center, which is what you see right there, has been live now for about 14 months, and it's now a one-stop shop for the credit card needs of over 35,000 external partner employees. We are also now able to address any and all regulatory risks by maintaining a training record for every user in our system. And Cornerstone, they have given us the ability to offer multiple learning delivery methods that we can now manage directly through the LMS, like web-based training and virtual ILT sessions, which we were doing that before, but now we can do it and track it. And we also have the power to offer on-demand learning that will teach our users soft skills like starting a conversation and overcoming objections that they can take in the LMS when needed. And our future vision for this is it'll definitely help improve our performance as a credit card company through increased sales and accuracy when promoting their credit card program to customers.
You know,
So,
and, Jordan, you
sorry.
might get to this. I just wanted to jump in because there was a question, and I'm not sure if you're going to get to this or not in a future slide. But the question came in is when you mentioned the content itself, right? All the different types of content you're delivering. What types of content are you delivering externally? Is it conventional documents, procedural flows? You know, if you just can quickly give us an idea of what kind of stuff you're sending out.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great question. So it actually kind of goes into this slide here. That pie graph I showed you at the beginning, you know, it was empty, but now because of what Cornerstone gives us, we've been able to kind of create documents and modules that we never really were able to do prior to having an e-learning system. So just an example of what we're doing, you know, every company, every bank has their own customized credit card program. So we create e-learning modules, you know, interactive, clickable e-learning modules that keeps the user engaged. That basically tells them about their credit card program and all of the features and benefits tied to it, the process flow that they need to follow if they're taking an application for a customer or sending someone who has questions about an existing credit card account to the correct team that can help them with that. And then also the most important piece is really our governance module, which goes over all the do's and don'ts when it comes to the regulations of credit cards. In addition to that, we also have materials that we put out there that basically just goes over any little thing that maybe we've heard a partner might need to ensure that their employees are as well equipped as possible. So for the most part, and you can see there that top left orange slide, we have right now 38 unique curriculums that we tailor to our credit card partners and their specific programs that goes into the product, process, and governance of their credit card program. We have over 30,000 plus users in the system right now, with that number growing daily. Cornerstone has a survey tool actually that we have just started using, and it's actually been an amazing asset to us because we can send out surveys to whoever we want, and that gives us the power of collecting feedback from those partners for continual enhancements to the system and navigation of it. We have 146 unique divisions currently, and that grows as we onboard new partners. And right now, we are over 27,000 completions throughout the course of 2016 and into our 2017 training deployment. So moving on here, and sorry, I hope I answered that question. Basically, from a content perspective, 90% of it is e-learning modules, product, process, and governance that goes over the credit card program, with a few materials, process flows kind of peppered in as it relates to that partner's credit card program.
Yeah, and I think in context, you know, that's maybe even a bit advanced for what a lot of organizations are pushing out. I think a lot when it comes to delivering learning outside, it's still basically PDFs. You know, everything from like, you know, considering something like a user manual, even, you know, that's our training to our customers. So it's interesting to hear that you're delivering the types of training that most organizations are, you know, focused on delivering internally. You're able to push that out to your partners in this scenario. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it wasn't easy. You know, I mean, as I said, the e-learning was a new frontier for us. So we had to do a lot of analysis on how to make it work, how to keep it interesting, how to keep users engaged. We went to a few conferences that actually specialized in e-learning, and we learned a lot. So, you know, I think also because of this, because of the oversight now over training, and because of Cornerstone, we've enhanced our training skills, and you know, it can only get better from here. So what we learned, and because I really only have a few short minutes, I'm not going to list everything we learned because we could be here probably the rest of the day. But you know, through this entire process, we never felt lost. We never felt like we didn't know what to do or how to fix something, and that's directly related to the amount of support Cornerstone gives and the quality of the product they provide. After a few test runs, we were already generating multiple reports with data that we never thought we'd have, and you know, that ties right into the governance aspect, to the compliance aspect, proving that people are being trained. It's really helped put an identity to the amount of work our training team has put into making this whole thing come to life. In addition, the interface that Cornerstone has built, it's easy to navigate and understand. Our end users have never really had issues figuring out where they need to go, and we really appreciate that, especially because we're also the team that supports any end user questions. So Cornerstone makes it easy to use, and they even give you options to make it maybe even easier or more advanced if your audience, needs that. So we also learned that managing over 300 partners and 30,000 plus users is not an easy task. No matter how much experience you have in this sort of thing, there's going to be some roadblocks. But again, Cornerstone helped us out with those whenever we needed it. For the first year of production, we were managing the Learning Center on the side of our desks while also fulfilling our main responsibilities as trainers. And we were actually finally able to hire a full-time LMS analyst, which has really been a worthwhile investment and a huge win for our team. And if you kind of have a similar setup where you'll be deploying a sort of extended enterprise module, or portal to a client base that's pretty large, I could not recommend more trying to get a full-time employee that would handle it as an LMS analyst. It's been a godsend. We also realized that having an LMS support team established is very important, just due to the number of troubleshooting requests that you will receive from your users, at least for the first year. We've actually found that the second year, the number of questions has really decreased because we're sending this annual training out each year, basically to the same users, and then any new users our partners give us. So since our partner employees are required to take credit card training on an annual basis, we're already looking ahead to the 2017 credit card curriculum deployment to all of our partners. And actually, that's on the next slide there, David. Just about what's next for us. We've already started with 2017 annual training deployment. And what's nice about Cornerstone is that it's not just an interface. Cornerstone has a multitude of products that you could work with them to implement and integrate into your system that'll just enhance the end user experience and make it life easier for you. So an example is we have just actually implemented this, but it's an inbound data feed from the First Bankcard portal directly to the Cornerstone portal. And what that's going to do is it's going to handle the enrollment and updates of our users and the deactivation of any users no longer working for our partners automatically. So this was exciting for us because we were handling all of the user uploads into the LMS manually. So now that that's in, it takes the human error aspect out of it. And we're also in the beginning stages of implementing an outbound data feed from Cornerstone to our portal, so that there's two different places a partner can go to get training completion data if they need to report on that as well. And then finally, just along with that, we're also working to get web service messaging between our portal and Cornerstone established. This is just another enhancement to our governance and compliance requirements. With this web service messaging, it'll make it so that our user has to take their training before they're given access to any of the other centers that we have within our portal. So, for example, a personal banker at ABC Bank, they won't be able to submit a credit card application until they've taken training. And with that web service messaging, it allows us to, in real time, talk with Cornerstone to see if they've completed their training in the Learning Center, so that then we can give them access to that application center.
Great.
So with that,
yeah.
Sorry, David.
No, great. Thank you so much for walking us through that and showing us, some real results and where you're headed. And I asked a few questions that came through. I do have a couple more questions for you, Jordan, but just so there's a sort of a wrap up, and this basically just summarizes what essentially Tom and I were talking about through the first half of the session. That you have to understand that what does happen outside those four walls, whether it's suppliers, manufacturers, or on the other side, resellers, franchisees, customers, it is consequential and it is your responsibility. And you need to be able to understand how to undertake that responsibility, what it means for your organization. And why this point goes for not just this, but learning in general overall. This has to be part of your overall learning strategies, that it has to be connected to performance at all levels. The outcome of learning isn't just learning. It's how is learning help move the needle within the organization? How is it helping us outside of the organization? Connecting learning to performance is key. And as Tom had laid out, the three strategies, right? So there's the achievement versus activity, the consumerization of learning, being able to deliver the learning in those ways, and then managing and extending the learning supply chain. Taking what you do internally and doing it well, and expanding that out across the entire extended enterprise. So what I want to do is, we do have a few minutes, and like I said, Jordan, there were a couple questions that came in while you were talking about your experience. So I just want to start there. Simple question, like when you deliver out to your partners, are there any language issues? Are you delivering anything in different languages, or is it all in English?
Yeah, so right now it is all in English. We have a couple partners that are based out of Japan and China that we were actually working with a translation company who actually specializes in taking e-learning content or any type of training content and then translating it over to the language that you need. Cornerstone also has language options as well, but we haven't actually had to go down that path quite yet because we only train the American call centers of these Japanese and Chinese countries who actually can speak English. So we were looking at it, but in the end, the partner said, no, actually, it's not needed. I think everyone here should be able to accommodate English. But it is something that we've explored and something we wouldn't be surprised if we do have to do in the future.
Right. And one last question for you. Are you guys using Salesforce as your CRM?
And so, sorry, I was looking at CRM. Is that like content repository management, or what does that stand for?
It's your customer management system. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we do use Salesforce actually as another, not as for anything training wise, but we use that more just to kind of keep track of our partner interactions and our overall relationship management timeline. So any important emails or any important documents or any important conversations we have with our partners, we use Salesforce to document that.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And this other question that came in, Nikhil, I'll answer this for you. You're talking about how your LMS can do all of these things. Why would I need some separate new thing to deliver to the extended enterprise? And that's sort of what we're talking about here. Is the fact is you don't. That's precisely our point. Is that a tool, and in this case, Cornerstone is what First Bankcard is using. That is an internally facing LMS for the organization. It isn't some different new separate platform, but what's required is if your internal LMS, if you're using it, to deliver learning internally, you want to make sure that if you're going to start delivering externally, you've got a strategy for that. What does that look like? How are you going to deliver? Is the experience different? Do you brand it differently than you would internally? But the point of the matter is, yes, a robust LMS that has all these features and functionality is what you should be able to use to deliver to the extended enterprise, much in the way First Bankcard uses Cornerstone. They deliver all of their internal learning that way, and they just use it as an extended platform to reach the external audience. So I don't know if Tom, I want to let you weigh in a little bit on that too, about the idea of a separate system. But I mean, that's the point, right? Is that Cornerstone, you can create a separate experience for the external audience using the same platform.
That's correct. There are other little nuances too, like for example, if you do want to charge for your training, when usually a lot of LMSs, internally you're not charging for training.
Right.
How do you actually take funds in and along those lines? So you start potentially departing a little bit from that, but no, that's the idea. As a matter of fact, I would obviously suggest not to get a whole different system
Right.
because then you're just doubling the work for no need.
Correct, and then most of a lot of the LMSs that do extended enterprise and do it well will have that sort of e-commerce module that allows you to create a shopping cart and collect payments and so forth without having to get a whole separate system. So yeah, what we're describing here is not separate from a learning system that a company might currently use, unless they happen to be using a provider that does not allow them to do these sorts of things or isn't set up to do it. I suppose you could really open up your LMS to any external parties if you wanted, but if the platform isn't designed to manage it in a significant way, you could be opening yourself up to a lot of trouble. So again, we've actually managed to answer all the questions as they came through, so that's great, and we've just hit the top of the hour. So I really appreciate everyone's contributions, their questions and their commentary. Thank you so much. And Tom, obviously, thank you so much for your perspective, and of course, Jordan, for bringing your story to everyone. I think it really helps to see what this looks like when people are actually doing it. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks Tom and Jordan for a great session, and we hope to see everybody on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.